What's up, Epic7? I'd like to wish you a happy Mola Monday, but there's something more important I need you to know about. RTA Insight Season ends January 5th. That's right, there's less than 20 days left in the RTA season. Now, if you haven't discovered this for yourself, it's an unpleasant RTA season to climb. For me, it's reminiscent of the Remlet meta, where Rem and Violent turned the entire RTA experience into a giant casino, where winning was tied more to luck than to skill. In my opinion, Smilegate made a massive mistake by allowing AoE counters and releasing units that combat mechanics and styles of play rather than units, but hey, here we are. Now in this video we're going to discuss the different styles of RTA combat, as well as pointing you in the right direction to pick up and refine your own personal skills. And then we'll dive into a tier list that discusses the best units to have built for this RTA Insight season, or what's left of it. But before we get into that, I want to remind you that it is the holiday season, and with the holiday season comes really nice packs from Smilegate. Their Christmas and New Year's packs are typically very high value, and to make that value even better, the good people over at Huawei AppGallery have extended their 20 to 30% off in-app purchases campaign through January. To take advantage of these savings, follow the link in the description to download the AppGallery. I also linked in the description a video showing a very detailed step-by-step process for installing the app and getting it up and running in case you run into stumbling blocks. When you install AppGallery, you'll have the option to join the Switzerland or the Turkey campaigns. The Turkey campaign does offer a slightly better discount, but the Switzerland campaign offers the use of PayPal, eliminating the issue of credit cards denying the charges because they think your card's been stolen by somebody in Turkey. So download and install the app. I would never recommend or endorse a product that I do not use personally myself, and this, well, I use this often. The savings are real, legal, legit, and approved by Smilegate. Whether you're a dolphin or a whale, Huawei has your back. Even if, after viewing the video in the description with the step-by-step process, you are still having trouble installing the app or making your first purchase, join my Discord, which is also linked in the description, and jump into the support room for assistance. Huawei staff and myself will be there to answer your questions and provide troubleshooting assistance to make sure you get these amazing deals. So what are you waiting for? So now that the sponsors are happy and we have found a way to save all of you a ton of money, let's get into talking about RTA. Now, when it comes to RTA, there are 6 main styles of play: cleaving, aggro, standard, tankdown, control, and casino or degen. In cleaving, you basically kill the entire enemy team before they take a turn. Cleave is probably the most gear-demanding style. It has the highest speed requirement of any style. Now, Cleave gets a lot of hate because no one likes being able to not play the game and just getting absolutely wrecked. You probably hear that Cleave is dead a lot, and, well, largely at higher levels of play, that's true. There are so many counters to Cleave right now that unless you really surprise your opponent, gear gap your opponent by an extreme amount, or fighting somebody who's inexperienced in countering Cleave, it's hard to win with Cleave in late 2023 RTA. Now, aggro is a popular style where you control the tempo of the fight to a point where you dismantle the enemy, keeping them on the defensive, to the point where they really have little or no chance of turning around the fight and winning. It's similar to Cleave in that the enemy really doesn't have a chance to play, but feels like they had a chance until after a couple of rounds of being dominated, they realize it's going to a bad place and they yield the fight. In a way, it's like cleaving in slow motion. I guess the illusion of having a chance makes it a little more acceptable to some than being cleaved, but both forms are designed to take total control of the fight and ruin the enemy's offense. Now, control style really is an amazing style. Your opponent will really enjoy playing against your control comp. You see, they'll get to spend more time with their family, maybe make a cup of coffee and work toward their PhD while you play the match for them. It will also improve their mood when it gives them unparalleled joy at seeing 15% resistance and thinking of the mauled on your face. Control comps are an integral part of this game, and they wouldn't be able to play the game without them. Not that they can really play the game much with them anyway. Now, as good as all that sounds, with the exception of DDR and Solitaria, Control is largely a dead style and more an aspect of certain units. True Tankdown is very uncommon this season. Tankdown typically involves multiple knights and sustains drafted in conjunction in a way to wear down the opponent over time. This was the crux of the Golden Boy era, which in my opinion was the worst thing we ever lived through. God, I hated that season. With injury becoming more prevalent and units dealing out insanely high damage outputs and the frenzy system being stacked against long duration fights, this style of play is all but dead, thankfully. The fifth style is Casino or Degen style, as some call it. It involves stacking luck in your favor. It centers around drafting RNG-based units as the core of your team, evasion and counter. While Degen and Casino units still have a strong place of power in RTA, their use as an entire style of play has fallen off due to there being so many answers for Degen units in general. It's more of a counter-cleave style than anything else. And finally, the most prevalent and most effective style play is Standard. Standard gets its name from being based off the standard RPG comp of a tank, a DPS, and a support, with your 4th and 5th picks being secondary support or sub-DPSs based on the situation your enemy presents you with. Standard comps are the easiest to use, but also require the most knowledge about unit interactions, synergies, and counters. They also require the deepest pool of units, but unlike other forms, strategy and drafting has a greater chance to allow a lower gear quality player to prevail over a higher gear quality player. For this reason, Standard is recommended above other forms as the style for players to begin with. It is hands down the best way to learn RTA and find your place in the competitive end of RTA. I recommend anyone who wants to push rank, be it Masters or higher, jump in and take some lumps. Take the Super Saiyan approach, get absolutely crushed and brutalized, learn from it, and become stronger. There really is no negative to doing RTA except for a little bit of beating to your morale and ego. You can even start out by just drafting 5 damage dealers and just run your opponent over. It's legit the way some people play at lower ranks, and it's a good way to learn the power of units and their synergies as well as their counters. It's also a great way to learn the value of support, as you will get punished for an all-offense, no-defense draft. So, draft with synergies in mind. Remember that as a basic of a standard draft, you want a tank mitigating unit, a support unit, like a healer or a debuffer or a buffer, and a DPS unit as your first 3 picks. And then your last 2 picks can be more support or more DPS that answer what your enemy is thrown at you. Drafting neutral, and by that I mean units that are good no matter what. Units that don't tip your hand and give away what you're planning. Making these your first 3 picks will help prevent you from getting hard countered early on. You never want to be 3 picks in and have your enemy pick a unit that makes you say, well, I have to ban that. Ideally, you always want to play as though you're banning the last unit. You don't always ban the last unit, of course, but you want to draft in a way where you plan on banning the last unit. This is because the last pick is the one that is most likely to counter your entire team and entire strategy, so you want to be able to have the option to ban that unit. My final thought is your pre-bans. Pre-banning a unit effectively removes them from the game for the duration of the fight, so make this pre-ban a unit that you have massive difficulties fighting. Once you settle on your pre-ban, don't change it up. You want to get familiar with playing with a banned unit, and changing it can throw your game off when suddenly the unfamiliar unit is reintroduced into the game. Now, I'm not saying don't ever change it, I'm just saying beware of making changes to what's familiar to your draft in the last few weeks of the season. So hopefully this information is enough of a primer to help you with your goals, be it Masters, Champs, or beyond. If you want to know how to swim in Champs, Emperor, and Legend, check out Valky's channel. This guy taught me a lot of what I know about RTA. He has a wealth of information for succeeding at higher levels. If your goal is simply just to get to Masters and you're relatively new at the game and all you want is that belly and skin, you may want to check out Deity's channel, where he focused on climbing all the way to Masters with a very new account and very low-end gear. Now, personally, the best I can do to help you with this climb is I've put together a little tier list of the top units in RTA right now. And when I say top units, this is not my opinion. This is based on raw data from the past 2 weeks of this RTA season. Let's get into this tier list. Now this list is based on the following metrics: the past 2 weeks of data collected from RTA this season, and it's organized based on averaging win rate and pick rate. In short, these are the top 30 units that you should focus on building and building well. As long as you have, like, say, half of these units built and ready to go, you should be able to succeed easily in your RTA endeavors. But even just a few of these units will be key in securing that belly and skin this season. Because remember, once again, January 5th at midnight Eastern Time, RTA is over, so get on it. We have 30 units on this list. All of these units are so top tier that I've organized them into 3 different S tiers, because no matter what order they're in, they're all top 30 units currently used in RTA. First is the triple S tier. Featured at the top of our list once again is Conqueror Lilius. You can't keep a good dictator down. With over a 50% win rate and drafted almost 50% of the time, there is no unit in this game that is more reliable or used in RTA. But don't lose hope, free-to-play players out there, because the number 2 on the list is Savior Auden. Savior Auden's ability to nuke through dark units and evade damage, as well as clap back and give her entire team immortality, places her at the number 2 on the list with a 49% win rate and a 48% pick rate. And speaking of free-to-play options, ever since her specialty change, Unbound Knight Arrowell has been at the top of the list with a 51% win rate and a 45% pick rate. She is a very stable addition to your team. And speaking of knights, who needs horse when you have horsepower? Last Rider Corral, for a combination of offense and defense, he gives you one of the best Arius Knights in the game, paired with some of the best knight damage in the game. Abyssal Euphine. Who would have thought we would have said, you know what, Landy isn't the strongest unit anymore, but here she is, with a whopping 52% win rate. I think her 30% pick rate is only due to not everybody having this unit, and the more people that get her, the more you're going to see her, especially with Holy Sacrifice and Lifesteal. Though she is hard to build, she is even harder to fight. And speaking of hard to fight, we have Naval Captain Landy. She self-CR pushes, she stacks her damage, she can wear counter set and Elbrus, she throws a boat, she throws a freaking boat at your party and does almost as much damage as Rylet's S3, but it's AoE. If you're lucky enough to have Landy on your team, RTA should be a breeze. Near the top of the list is Moon Bunny Dominial. Moon Bunny Dominial's placement on the list is because she counters so many units, including the number 1 on this list, Conqueror Lilius. Having a good fast Moon Bunny on your team is fantastic. I strongly recommend you put immunity on her, even if it means you have to drop her effect resistance. You want her to be able to ignore the S2 on Conqueror Lilius. Everybody's favorite redhead, Lionheart Sermia. Ever since her buff, she's become even more of a debilitative unit for your opponents to come across. Whether you build her with Lifesteal or use Golden Rose to keep her healthy, she self-heals, she does tremendous damage, and she is activated by counterattacks and dual attacks, which this meta is chocked full of. Emperor Zeo. Love him or hate him, he's here to stay. Whether you build him like mine with a lot of effectiveness, or whether you slap some damage on him, he is a great unit to have on your team. He's not just for Cleave anymore, he's for stopping Cleave, and he is for activating other units that people didn't really expect to see him used with. A damage-built Zeo works fantastic with Death Dealer Ray. Now, before I get added in the comment section about my crit chance, yes, he only needs 50% crit chance, but sometimes I like to cleave with Commander Pavel, and that lets me S1 as my first action for a crit, allowing me to cleave with Pavel here and there. It's a minor tech, don't necessarily recommend it for everybody. And rounding out our top 10 is Angel of Light Angelica. The only reason this unit isn't picked more is because she is probably the most common pre-ban in the game. Nobody likes fighting this unit. She is devastating for your enemy to have. Now, some people have found a way to live with her. I have not. I always ban her. Having constant strips and debuffs, and if you do an AoE attack, She gives skill null to the whole team and cleanses the whole team, and she cycles her skills wicked fast, and she can even carry a book. It's just too much for me to let through. If you don't plan on pre-banning her, build her. She'll be picked a lot on your team. Now we drop down to the second tier, where we look at Ocean Breeze Lulika, one of the few healing Soul Weavers who makes it through into this meta. Her ability to spam her ice cream buff, which is a heal your characters can just carry with them and not worry about having stripped, along with her ability to strip and silence herself, makes her a fantastic unit to support your team. My Karena lost her rocket punch to Pillis. We'll get into that later. Noble Oath is an okay substitute for anti-cleave, but I do recommend rocket punch and some effect resistance if you're going to use this unit a lot. Karena is a great way to wreck people who try to cleave you or even just play a little bit too aggressively. Her damage is fantastic, her self-defense buffing and self-CR pushing really brings it home. Some people say she's not pickable anymore, and based on her pick rate, a lot of people are believing it. But let me tell you, Spectre Tenebria is a force in RTA, and if you don't have this unit built and ready to go, you're going to hurt yourself with some drafts. It is not uncommon for people to pick single target DPSs, especially when they're trying to limit the amount of counterattacks and Elbrus procs coming in, and if you catch somebody with their pants down only using single target units, you can slam Spectre Tenebria into your draft and they either ban her or they lose. The Goth Elf herself, Briar Witch Asaria. What makes Briar Witch so good in this meta is 1. Hiding behind Guiding Light, 2. Being able to penetrate evasion, 3. AoE defense breaking the team, ignore ER on Soulburn, 4. You can't kill her, she gets immortality, 5. Having a defense break even on her S1, 6. Doing extra pop damage, 7. She blocks people from coming back from the dead like Euphine using her Holy Sack. I pre-banned this unit. She is a problem to deal with, and if you don't plan on pre-banning her yourself, build this unit. You will find uses for her in several occasions. And it should surprise no one that a second limited unit is on the list. Midnight Galililius, fantastic for dealing with Last Rider Crow, who is near the top of the meta, as well as other really tanky units. When built strong, she can nuke down high HP menaces, which is great in this tanky meta. She's not necessarily a first pick, but she's a pick where if your opponent doesn't have a plan, she will ruin their draft. Mediator Kowarik is not a unit I ever expected to see anywhere but the top tier, but he has fallen off quite a bit, mostly in pick rate. His win rate is still very high. Mediator Kowarik cleanses, he strips, he CR pushes, he self-CR pushes, he does damage, he gives immunity, he gives attack buff. He is basically a Soul Weaver's kit built onto a warrior's frame. This is a unit that you need on your team. He will solve all kinds of problems for you. Martial Artist Ken's race to the top has been due largely because of Euphine's success. He also counters other units like Landy and anything that really spams AoE crits. He has a few counters, but not many, but what makes Martial Artist Ken so important is he is one of the only hard counters to Abyssal Euphine. Just when we thought control comps were dead, Death Dealer Ray comes back to ruin everybody's good time. This unit is a monster to fight. If you don't go in with a lot of cleanse and a plan on how to take him out, he will slowly whittle you away and take away your ability to play the game. One of the most banned units in the game for a reason. Lua is devastating. She rolls back your skills with a non-attack skill. She's got a defense break built into her kit. She hides behind Guiding Light, and she cycles her skills wicked fast. If you have a Lua and you don't plan on pre-banning her, build her and just ruin lives. You don't even have to be stupid fast anymore because the meta has slowed down a lot. A shocking counter pick is Rimuru. He has found his place back on the meta. Mine's not that great, but he gets the job done. So many things are spamming buffs now that Rimuru is able to drop hard nukes and take out troublesome units, and he has even found a niche use against ML Ken where people are building him with no crit chance, just loading him up with attack, no crit chance, no crit damage, just a ton of attack, a ton of tankiness, and putting him on Uberous Tooth to nuke Kens into oblivion without proccing a counter. When people say Cleave is dead, they mean mostly dead. But Rand's not just for Cleave anymore. Anybody that can Soulburn spam a defense break and strip is welcome on the team. You run this guy with, say for example, Spectre Tenebria, and you can watch your opponents melt to the damage. I'll probably get some pushback on Bologna being so far down the list, but numbers don't lie. Now her win rate is still insane, above 50%, but she's just not being picked as often, which is why she is lower on the list. I'm not sure if this is due to other options being drafted more commonly, like ML Ken, or if people just aren't realizing how incredibly powerful this unit is. You can build her on counter set, you can build her on destruction set, you can even build her on lifesteal set. She's very, very versatile, and her ability to crit on any successful attack makes her fantastic against the anti-crit of units like Navy Captain Landy. Now let's talk about Big P, Shadow Knight Pillis. This is what happened to my Rocket Punch Gauntlet. This is what happened to a lot of people's Rocket Punch Gauntlet. I know, it seems kind of silly, but hey, this unit spams self-defense and hits so hard, penetrates evasion, is a nightmare for people who want to run Auden, can whittle away even the tankiest units, and she's a specialty change, meaning she is pretty accessible to all. If you've got a Rocket Punch Gauntlet, you might want to try building this unit. You'll be surprised with how effectively she can be used. People still haven't wrapped their brains around just how devastating Knockwall is. Hiding behind Guiding Light, she's basically a DPS version of Lua. The ability to soul burn and remove buffs and not have it be a non-attack skill really complements Lua's skill. God forbid you get both of them on a team. She is fantastic to run with Death Dealer Ray. If you've got this unit, you should build her. You don't need to be this fast again because, once again, the meta has slowed down, but the more speed you can get on Knack, the better. As long as units like Auden and Rylet exist, Zahak will have a job. This unit is fan-freaking-tastic at punching through evasion and nuking down these problem casino units. While Last Piece Corinne did take a little bit of his stock, Zahak still seems to be the preferred go-to choice, mostly because of his immortality after he does his attack. Ambitious Tywin is, in my opinion, one of the most overlooked and underrated mitigating knights in the game. His ability to steal souls, his ability to stun, his ability to ignore ER, provoke, along with being able to wear Arius. This is a fantastic unit to have on your team, especially when Last Rider Crow is not an option. He is one of the better mitigating knights for dealing with debuffing comps. And because we're dealing with debuffing comps, it's always good to have a Edward Elric built. Now, if you can pull off a destruction set Edward, or better yet an injury set Edward, that might do better for you. My gear's spread a little thin now, so this is the best Edward I could build. The lifesteal keeps him alive, and his damage is on point. So he gets the job done, even though his defense is a little bit lacking. Any unit who can cleanse and bring units back from the dead and has a heal on all three of her skills is going to have a place in this meta. Destina is a fantastic support unit, especially when you're running a little bit slower team or when you're dealing with a lot of debuffs. Velian is a unit who will never not be meta. Her ability to turn off souls and block the strongest mage artifact in the game, Taga Hill's Book, makes her a fantastic unit. Whether you build her on counter for extra damage, or you build her on injury to whittle down the enemy is up to you. Both builds are fantastic options. And that brings us to another very underrated unit, Urban Shadow Shu. If the opponent starts picking HP scalers, start picking Urban Shadow Shu. She does so much to take out units like Leafy and Last Rider Crow, and really anybody who runs HP scaling. This is a powerhouse unit. The only barrier to entry is she does take pretty decent gear to make her usable and survivable, but you'll be surprised how well this unit works. And that is our top 30. Now there are some other fantastic units that you want to consider building, from Politis to Rylet to Solitary of the Snow, and even APOC Ravi, who some people think is out, but you can't keep a good girl down. APOC Ravi is a solid anchor unit that you should have built for the end of the season. But there was only room for the top 30, so I wanted to stick with what the metrics said were the best picks to build. I hope this list helps you in building your units so you can jump into RTA and accomplish your goals, be it a master's rank for the skin or pushing all the way up to Emperor. If you have any questions, ask them in the comments section. Don't forget to join my Discord, and you guys have a great rest of your week.